Urban Wetlands Group of the Illinois Sierra Club. My name is Linda Tilton, and I will be your host tonight. Our programs feature speakers on topics relating to our environment, stewardship, wildlife and nature, public policy, or anything about outdoor activities like hiking, canoeing, bird watching, in my case, some bushwhacking, but that's another story. In a minute, we will hear from our featured speaker for November, Dr. Mila Marshall, not Mila Milos. That was a correction by my computer, and I do apologize for that. It's Dr. Mila Marshall. She is a clean water advocate for the Illinois Sierra Club, who will help us understand the dilemma of those forever chemicals like the PFAS, P-F-A-S. First, we have a couple of brief announcements. As Doug said, we are recording this so that you can watch it in the future. Turn off your camera if you don't wish to appear in the video. We will send out a YouTube address. I will send that out of this program later this week, so you can watch it again, or if you are missing it, you can watch it then at your convenience. If you are watching this, please make sure you mute your computer, especially if you have a barking dog like I do, or television or commotion in the background. Please feel free to ask any questions of our speaker this evening by using the chat room at the bottom of your screen. We will select questions after the presentation, and they will be directed to our speaker. Now let's move on to the November program. Dr. Mila Marshall works to mobilize and energize diverse networks across Illinois around clean water issues related to wastewater, agriculture, and industry. She advocates for novel partnerships that protect the quality of streams, lakes, rivers, and Illinois tributaries for all. Furthermore, she addresses the legacies of water infrastructure disinvestment by building bridges towards solutions through connecting and educating the scientific and legislative communities at the city, county, and state levels. One of our favorite quotes from Mila is as follows: "If we wish to see healthy, equitable communities thrive, we have to divest from products like PFAS that do us harm and hold the companies using them accountable." We welcome you, Dr. Marshall. You have the controls.
I'm just talking and I'm already muted. Thank you so much for the invitation. I appreciate being here. And funny story, I put the 12th on my personal calendar and I was like, wait a minute, I know that's not on the 12th because I connected this talk in my mind for what's called World Toilet Day. I don't know if you're familiar with that Global Awareness Day, but it was started a few years ago to bring attention to the reality of sanitation inequity around the world. 60% of people live without adequate sanitation, which means that they can't wash their hands, they can't bathe, and probably most importantly, have nowhere to relieve themselves. And so they don't have toilets. We do deal with some of those issues in terms of raw sewage and its impact on health and local economies here in Illinois. And I'm really happy to be here on this day. Even though we're talking about forever chemicals, I do want to put a feather in your hat for the realities of sanitation and infrastructure. And there is a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that we keep clean water for all here in the state. So before I begin my talk, also, please do feel free to use the chat box to put your questions as the talk goes along. There will be time at the end for us to have some Q&A, at which point you can come off mute and share your question or resources. Please do feel free to use that chat box as a place to keep a marker for where your thoughts are in any given moment. And so I also want to say thank you to my amazing colleagues. I don't do this work alone. And so Ann Baskerville and Sandy Loftus, who work with me closely as clean water team members, thank you for your support and for being here, for spreading the word. You all just remind me of we do this work together. And I'm really, really proud of the efforts that we've put in to help people understand how they can be a part of change. Okay, so a little bit of background on these chemicals. The problems that PFAS solved, well, most like all scientific and technological advancements, there are issues that compromise our comfort as well as time. And so much like nitrogen fertilizers, when those were developed, no one could foresee the negative impact of overuse or of the lack of regulation. And so having products that are heat resistant or stain resistant are attractive. Just think about the simplicity of not having to clean something with your hands, or the ease of which you can make sure that you can go to sleep using your you all remember heating blankets, using your heating blankets and not worrying about your comforter or your mattress catching on fire, or being too close to a radiator and the products that are on you becoming flammable. So those were some benefits, right, of having products that we can trust and that also made our lives simple. But there was a cost. The company that developed these chemicals, 3M, it's been almost 100 years. So around 1930, PFAS chemicals were synthesized and they became mass distributed around the 40s and 50s. The earliest detection of these chemicals related to humans was actually found in the blood of those working in the plant. And so it's from that point that, people started being curious about how is it that we can make sure that these chemicals are not invading other areas of our lives. What is it that we should be doing about it? But here we are in 2023, nearly 100 years later, now realizing, wow, we have a huge problem on our hands. Everyone is required to participate in the solutions, and some of it is going to be uncomfortable with fully acknowledging that we have to increase our environmental IQ. We have to shop more wisely. We also have to consider, if you are an entrepreneur or supporting small businesses, educating them in terms of their supply chain. And so some of these new emerging issues in 2023, coming at it from a Sierra Club lens, we're moving out of the conversations of this kind of purist idea of conservation, and we're really needed in the supply chain sector to help people understand the end issue of water contamination or soil contamination, okay, but we need for people to shop a little smarter and create products that are much healthier for the environment. So PFAS can be found in drinking water. It can be found in our food system. It's in waterproof, stain-proof, heat-proof fibers and materials. They're found in food packaging, for example. Literally, all of the things that we touch and or ingest have some permeability to PFAS contamination. And so also, while you're receiving this, I know it can feel really jarring. And that's just PFAS, right? We know that there are other chemicals and toxins and pollutants that are in our air, land, and water, and it can seem really overwhelming. I don't wish to share this with the spirit of inciting fear and anxiety. I wish for you to receive this information from a place of becoming educated, knowing that there are things that you can do, and there are things that this chapter, this organization, and our allies are actively doing and have been doing to address this situation. There seems like there's no escape, whether it is the businesses that are concerned about what are we going to do if, policies come about and we no longer can use this. The manufacturers are worried about their bottom line, about their employees, about their investors. Then there are the policies that need to be impacted, whether it's federal or state, or for incineration processes or soil or water. Then there's the reality of being an uninformed consumer, and then the tension of being a really informed consumer. I found myself often just very just hyper aware and feeling like I have to be as vigilant as possible when I shop, and that can be really anxiety inducing. Polluted water is also a commodity, and to think that businesses are becoming profitable because there is a toxin that we didn't ask for to be removed, and now, water is a commodity and cleaning the water is a commodity. Municipal budgets are strained because there might be some potential lawsuits. So pursuing, litigation is expensive, as well as, thinking about if you have a municipal wastewater treatment facility and you've been distributing sludge to your growers and your farmers, which then, impacts the commodities that they grow. This is a cycle, and no single entity can solve this problem alone. It is absolutely necessary that each of us understands where we fit in this cycle, and how it is that we can be a part of the change. So I love this diagram because it shows the relationships between the materials and the exposure and the movement of it. And this is one of the tensions about PFAS, is that it doesn't matter your age, your race, your ethnicity, your geographical locale. You are being impacted by this family of chemicals. So people have caught on. And I think I was most proud to find out that there are unions of firefighters that are pushing back. Of the population of people who are vulnerable and oftentimes overlooked when it comes to this issue, it is definitely firefighters, whether that is the materials that are touching their physical body or the foam that they have to use in order to put out the fires to keep our communities safe. Finding a way to connect this with the everyday worker. I'm, just really excited about how to build a diverse alliance because of this shared tension. There's, lawsuits against 3M, where there are some people saying like 10.3 billion is not enough. And while this company is trying to put out the fire with this, with these resources, it's great to see states saying like, no, we need to think very strategically before we agree to any deal, and make sure that this company is held accountable in a way that makes sense. And I mean, this could set precedent for environmental contamination and other chemicals. And I think I'm really excited about that. There are places in which rely on tourism and also are suffering from climate change, like Hawaii. So what does it mean when you now are so public about the types of contaminants and pollutants and how it impacts, your natural world and what it is that you present to draw people in? We haven't yet kind of tackled how do these stressors between storms and toxins impact an entire economy that relies on tourism. There's settlements as well as, farmer complaints and lawsuits. And so we're seeing multiple industries, kind of come together and say to this company, like, no, we want you to be held accountable. Illinois also has, addressed this issue and is, pushing back with understanding what impact has this had on Illinois families and waterways. And so we're not alone. So what is 3M saying? And I think this is the most interesting reality, is that there's, have you ever met somebody that, you ask them a question and they kind of answer it, but redirect? And so I wanted to juxtapose the Illinois Department of Public Health's statements in response to a similar question relative to what industry and 3M presents on its website. And so, can PFAS be eliminated in modern products? And so 3M will say, and this is a direct quote, we continually research new and better ways to serve our customers in some important settings, including national security, aerospace, semiconductor manufacturing. It's critical for their unique properties. What does that say to you? It didn't answer the question. What it's communicating is you don't want this product to disappear. It highlights national security, right? So what does that say? It's playing off of your fear of this removal or the pursuit of the removal or any adjustment could possibly put you and your family in harm's way. Very clever tactic to get people to say, okay, what are these environmentalists really trying to do? Whereas IDPH is very clear and give you facts like some of them are no longer made because of the environmental health concerns. They may persist and may continue in surface waters where they were made or used. Very clear, right? There's a lot that we still don't know about PFAS, but what I do appreciate is people being presented with accurate, real-time information about where we are with this chemical. So I don't know if you all read the Sierra, and so this is a winter edition where Jeshin Choi, who is a very active writer, her article, PFAS are everywhere, we need systems change to fix that. And so again, bringing back this idea that this is not only, this isn't just about the removal of a product, this is about the process of the development of chemicals, the relationship with the private sector, the policies and the lobbyists that protect businesses and private interests to the detriment of the public. And so this is a systems problem, and we do need a systems change led by the people who wish to keep people employed, have a healthy economy, but make sure that the products that we're creating and that we're selling are also in harmony with our environment. Another question that was posed, do PFAS or PFOAs or PFOSs cause cancer? Because we've seen this conversation, and even though we stick with kind of supporting the environment, people do want to know, how does this impact my physical body? And so 3M said, rigorous, reliable scientific evidence does not show extensively studied PFAS cause cancer at levels found in people, right? They just threw everything at you to try and make it as narrow, like there's no reliable scientific evidence, right? That's been extensively studied. IDPH has a different approach. Most of what we know about the health effects comes from the studies of humans and animals exposed to those substances and are no longer produced in the US, but continue to be detected in human blood, right? And so even though we have these questions about the physical harm, industry will lead you to believe like, oh, there's still not enough research done. It's not, but we're not waiting for cancer clusters to pop up to be able to show evidence. People are really moving a little bit faster, and a lot of advocates have expectations of state agencies to kind of speed up their responses and research as well. And so speaking about the medical community, we know that, as we think about diversifying the conservation base, that on one level, it's with professionals, and arming doctors about knowledge and making sure that they choose labs that can test for this chemical is extremely important. And so this was published in the Environmental Health News. It's a great website that presents all sorts of environmental and health related information, not just for the medical professionals, but there are not many physicians that are aware of this issue. They don't know, what labs will run this test, or the types of tests that should be used, or how to help people acknowledge maybe they should get their blood tested. And so a part of what it is that the Clean Water team is really interested in doing is diversifying the message and directing it strategically to some of these groups that may not see themselves as water allies or environmental justice advocates, but they do deal with human health and exposure to contaminants as medical professionals. And so as Ms. Choi said, this is it requires a systems response, and this is everywhere. In 2020, 2021, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency did a sampling project in which they collected water, or what they call finished water, from public water treatment facilities. And I am going to exit here and take us directly to what this looks like real time. And so I will provide the link for this. It's also active in the talk that I will make available to our hostess. And so there were there were 1,428 facilities that were tested. This dashboard is not and never will be updated, which I thought was very interesting. So this is only for 2020, 2021. So these will not change. These values will not change, but it is still very useful. And so there were no detections of PFAS or of I think it was 5 chemicals that they were testing for in 1,264 of those water treatment facilities that were tested. There was confirmation at 149 sites. So about 10% of the public water supplies had some presence of the chemical compounds that are shown down here: PFOA, PFBS, PFHXS, and PFNA. No, I do not know what all of those stand for, but that is why I love this page, because you can dig a little deeper and find out a little bit more about what the chemicals actually are. The sources of the water, for the most part, 93% of them were groundwater, so about 1,333. 6% was surface water, and 0.7% was other. Here you can scroll up and down to identify things like what does nanograms per liter mean? It means parts per trillion. So it does give you a bit of a key or an index for you to know what the abbreviations are. So for example, there shown in red, there were 68 confirmed positives that are above the Illinois EPA health-based guidance level. And then there were 81 confirmed that were below the Illinois EPA health-based guidance level. These links right here will take you directly to a Department of Public Health or EPA page to continue reading. And so you also can use this to identify, should you get yourself tested for PFAS. Now these change based on where you are in the in the frame. So that's the fun part about it. So while it's not real time, you can go in and out and see the values change. And so the key on the other side, red, yellow, orange, blue, will help you determine, all right, the level of. So if it's above the health-based guidance level, or it's below the health-based guidance level. All right. Oh, sorry. It kicked me out. All right, can everybody see that again?
Yes.
Okay. Oh no. For some reason, my presentation has frozen, so give me 1 second, please. And thank you for your patience. Oh, technology.
Not to worry, Mila. This happened.
Yeah, thank
It
you.
happens. Don't worry. We'll wait.
Thank you. I had to like shut it all the way down and try and bring it back. I'm using this fancy new program.
Technology is 1 step forward and 2 steps back.
All right, let's see if we got it now. Okay. Let's see if we can try this again.
You're up.
It's there.
Beautiful. Ah, we made it. All right, so there are other states that are regulating PFAS in drinking water. Illinois is one of them, and there are some federal propositions of PFAS limits that are coming down the pipeline for from the federal government, which would be the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. It would be my hopes that other states, you know, in the Great Lakes especially, would get on the same page, but it's a bit of a patchwork. In Michigan, you'll see that they have an enforceable drinking water standard. In Illinois, we have guidance levels, and so they're not enforceable at the moment. They are suggestions, and this is why I think it's really important for the public to understand what that means. The Illinois Environmental Protection Agency cannot enforce, which means that they cannot make a company stop using PFAS in certain products. We would, we're kind of hoping that that can happen, as well as requiring wastewater treatment facilities to do testing, monitoring, and or abatement of PFAS in wastewater discharge. So there are some risks, and this is a really great kind of one of the better public infographics that I have seen to help people understand, should they test their water for PFAS, especially if they are consuming well water, and then also helps you understand at what concentration of PFAS in your drinking water could potentially impact your health and how, and directs you to the type of treatment and or mitigation. And so there are developmental alterations that can happen with consumption of PFAS, low birth weight in the event that you are a pregnant body, increased risks of cancer at really, exponentially smaller amounts, decreased vaccine effectiveness. That's kind of intimidating, especially in this post-COVID era, in the event that we as a society of public water drinking people have consumed a chemical that makes a vaccine less effective. We may be looking at some very challenging health experiences down the line. There are things that people can do for their drinking water, such as using carbon filtration, as well as reverse osmosis. But because we have guidance levels, they're not drinking water standards. They're not a part of the Safe Drinking Water Act. There is no regulatory framework in the Clean Water Act even. And so the values that are suggested for like no more than 2 parts per trillion per PFOAs are simply their guidelines to help even medical professionals understand at what concentration in someone's system could they be compromised. There are other potential health effects, and so we use words like potential and possible and possibly, because again, we don't have that much information. We're just kind of now studying what is going on. If you have any questions, there is a hotline, not a hotline, but a number that you can call, which is the toxicology department of Illinois Department of Public Health, or you can email Department of Public Health.tox@illinois.gov. And so again, your health questions would go to IDPH. Your drinking water, wastewater questions would go to the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. And so kind of putting the pieces of this puzzle together, yes, your water can be tested, but you also may have to conduct your own test. And so if you are curious as to if this is present in your drinking water, you can contact the toxic department of IDPH, and they will help you identify testing options, whether that is sending your water to a state approved lab or collecting the water and sending it, or if there are other options. Yes, PFAS can be removed from your private drinking water systems, it can remove certain chemicals. There's over 5,000 of them in the family of PFAS, or significantly reduce them. We also know that no, it's not federally regulated. There's a process to make sure that emerging contaminants are studied to the point where there's some confidence in the types of water standards, drinking water standards, effluent discharge standards that are healthy for the environment and healthy for people. And yes, Sierra Club has been doing PFAS work with municipalities as well as wastewater treatment plants, and even the public, especially with growers and farmers. It is suggested that, or recommended that you do some digging to make sure that the solution, whether you have a reverse osmosis system, or you're using a carbon filter, is certified by the National Sanitation Foundation. And so you can use this website. It's linked, right here. You can use the website, put in the brand, the model, and identify if this is certified, so that you can have even more confidence on if what you've purchased is appropriate and agreed upon by professionals. So we also have, we were a part of Dark Waters. There was a film screening, and it showed the real story of a community pushing back on DuPont for its chemical contamination. And it was such a powerful film. And I think the Sierra Club being kind of hosting that space doing the film screening really impressed upon people that communities are fighting back by and large. And the conservation community is here to help educate, but it does take a significant amount of courage to push back on industry, educate your neighbors, and really understand that this fight is a generational fight for clean air, land, and water for years to come. And so we're going to start moving over into, well, how does all of this stuff get into our water? And how does the Sierra Club, where are we in this conversation, and what have we been doing? And so I love this. It's another diagram that brings our attention to this part right here. Wastewater treatment facilities, the creation of biosolids, domestic waste, and how it is that the chemical ends up leaching into our water. And as you can see, we have all of these pipes that are coming from certain, certain point sources, right? And so whether the waste ends up in a landfill, or if waste moves down our combined sewage systems, in a lot of cases, especially in post-industrial cities, the processes that occur at wastewater treatment facilities are not in lockstep with the types of chemicals and compounds that are coming into the system. They operate based off of what they are legally required to do, and upgrades to these systems can be extremely expensive. The byproducts of wastewater treatment facilities include biosolids or phosphorus recovery, or the actual finished water that returns to surface water, for example. And in many cases, with the exception of Chicago, goes back into the source of a city's drinking water. And so this cycle is something that all of us do need to be aware of, because it doesn't matter if you incinerate it and things, plumes escape, and there are particles that will settle onto roadways, or dust that moves around and settles onto water systems. If it is things that are buried and over time degrade and then leach into the aquifer or move through the wastewater system, everything ends up coming to our water and someone's source of drinking water. We're almost finished. Really proud that in 2021, Illinois passed the PFAS incineration ban. It was and I feel like I want a round of, we should give ourselves a round of applause for all of the people. You might have been someone that helped, help the Sierra Club accomplish this, as we were definitely a part of it. But it was the first law in the nation to ban PFAS incineration statewide. I feel like that is something that we should be very proud of. And former State Representative Latoya Greenwood and State Senator Christopher Belt were really influential in that as well. Yeah, we hope to see other pieces of legislation like this in other states. But this means that no, you cannot, you can't continue with this process. And we're going to be pushing the private sector to find better solutions, and you pay for it, and it not costing the people of the state, as well as costing us our health and livelihood. Sierra Club has been supporting municipalities. And so we are working on something called the Nutrient Loss Reduction Strategy Implementation Plan. That is a mouthful, and directly supporting wastewater treatment facilities to decrease the amount of phosphorus that they're releasing into the water. Well, that might be a priority that we're really passionate about, but we come into a city and their sustainability professional or their city manager says, hey, do you know about PFAS? And that is what we need to help and prioritize. And so we also realize that this is very real. When we go to a city and we introduce ourselves, sometimes they don't know who the Sierra Club is. They might have learned about us in a different way. And we have the agenda that we lead with, or the water priority that we are leading with. And they respond with, but what about PFAS? that often requires us to serve municipalities in the moment and meet them where they are and prioritize where their attention is. And so we're finding that we have to be prepared to pivot, but this is one of the reasons why we have reconsidered a PFAS agenda. How is it that the Sierra Club Clean Water team is going to be moving this forward, and how can we activate our volunteers to help support us? So the Village of Rantoul was really forward thinking, and what we did for them was help them create a clear set of slides so that they could educate their public. We have become really good at teaching people about how to talk about water tensions, how to create the framework so that you don't lose people, because water can be really, you can jump into the deep end and lose really wonderful allies if they don't understand the language, and you're not thoughtful about what they can do with it after they get off of the call. So more specifically, the biosolids piece is a real tension for the economy of byproducts from the wastewater process. And so in the case of the Village of Rantoul, they were saving millions of dollars because they did not have to bury their biosolid waste. It is a product of the sewage treatment process. It is small particles of solids that are typically dried and then used as fertilizer for agriculture, for landscaping, parks, as well as golf courses, for example. And so often biosolids are used for turf, but it also is given away for free to farmers and to other stakeholders. And so the city doesn't have to pay to bury it, and the company or the entity doesn't have to pay to buy it. And so that is redirected resources. And now that PFAS is being found in biosolids, you're seeing cities pay to dispose of it to keep people safe, but that busts budgets, and it requires those that were receiving those products for free to now have a line item to buy something that is safe. I have to say, Sonia Lunder is our toxics expert. She is, I don't know if I would know as much as I do about PFAS without her. She answers all of the questions, and she was influential in helping a project that studied fertilizers, the biosolids that were being used. And it was this great article that was published that kind of helped people understand that there were many fertilizers made with biosolids from nine different states, where they all had high levels of PFAS. That is significant. Sierra Club is a national organization, and yes, each chapter does kind of move autonomously, but this type of threat to all of us allows for us to kind of come together and create shared agendas for how is it that we're going to work collaboratively to have a national impact. But each state is very different in terms of its politics and its industries. So how is it that we use that information to address state-centered issues, and then relationships for how it is we can move a little bit more regionally. And so the sludge in gardens creates tension, especially for low-income growers. We gave a talk at the Chicago Food Policy Summit last year. I believe we will be returning, where we were educating urban growers on biosolids, and many of them had complained that the products that they were getting from the MWRD, the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, it was not clear if the biosolids had been tested for PFAS. They had been reading about PFAS in the newspaper. Shout out to the Chicago Tribune that has done an excellent job. We know that environmental journalism, especially for water, is important in passing on that information and increasing people's water IQs and toxic IQs. And so they get the credit for those those growers were on that call, like, hey, can you help us find out more information? Because their website is dense, we don't understand it. And so we're happy to help support if you know other entities that are trying to create more digestible, understandable information on PFAS, we would definitely love to help. And so you can find out about if PFAS is in your products or residuals or municipal waste by checking the label, right? You can ask suppliers, and there's also websites that you can do some ground truthing on. And with that, last but not least, just some facts. Half of the sewage generated in the US is treated and then spread on agricultural lands. That means that when our waste moves through the system, half of that across America is used to fertilize our agricultural lands, commodities that are both consumed by animals as well as created in secondary products. Now remember, because these are forever chemicals, they are not sometimes, they cannot be denatured by heat under a certain temperature. And so they will move through the food supply chain from primary products to secondary products as well. There's a good way to practice to reduce, reuse, and recycle waste. So, again, another solution that created this scaled up problem, but sewage can be, and most often is, contaminated with PFAS chemicals. They do not break down naturally in the environment. They can build up in gardens and in landscaping spaces. People can consume them and it can bioaccumulate. There currently is no outward, telling by the physical body that you've been contaminated. So it does require testing to identify it. And it is estimated that 20 million acres of American croplands are polluted by PFAS chemicals. It is really expensive to remove these from systems, and it is not, some removal processes will only successfully remove particular chemicals. Like there's over 5,000 of them, I believe. And so this company might be able to do 2 or 3, but you might only have 1 of them and 5 other ones that the company currently cannot. And so that's another issue that we're seeing, that it's expensive. It may be a mismatch in terms of what a company can do and the chemicals that you have, and the cost of learning is also time consuming, and it can be intense. But you all are amazing volunteers and allies, and we appreciate your time in learning and helping us. And we hope that you will find a way to be a part of this PFAS puzzle problem moving forward. And with that, thank you so very much, and I will take questions.
Steve, will you handle that, please?
Yes, I will. The first question is, here, let me back up. We get to the top of the list. Oh, where were the samples taken from? For the drinking water, community water sources, surface water, Lake Michigan, that kind of thing? Where do they get the source for the testing?
So for IEPA, these were public drinking water systems.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So that was IEPA's 2020, 2021. We did meet with IEPA. I do not believe that they will be conducting another sampling survey, but they are in the space of creating some regulatory language that will go into NIPID's permits, I believe, for wastewater treatment facilities. I'm not sure what's happening on the drinking water side, if they're waiting for the federal EPA to provide the framework for what that could look like.
All right. The next one is, and there's 2 more, and they're sort of related. The first one says, are there testing kits people can buy to test their own water?
Steve, I do believe there are. Again, I think Department of Public Health would have a little bit more insight on what brands or what brands or the confidence in certain testing kits. because let's be honest, I guess I'm being honest with myself. I didn't realize that you can say something is anything, right? I can put together a water kit and say that this tests for PFAS, and there's no requirement for me to be approved by any entity or agency. Sierra Club doesn't do endorsements, so you do have to be diligent in identifying, is this a trusted brand, and is the information that the test is giving me, is it accurate? You may be able to contact them to identify if you can send your water to a state lab. I think that's what they're probably going to suggest. And then they'll give you a water kit. They'll give you the information on how to collect it. And then you will send it in, and then you'll get your results, and they can help you from there.
Okay. And then the next question sort of goes right on to that is, what or are there home treatments available to remove these PFAS?
Yes, there currently are carbon filters on the market. And again, there was that slide that if I can go back. All right, so if you are going to purchase a filter or a reverse osmosis system in your home, you can use this site to identify if it is certified by the National Sanitation Foundation. So this way, at the very least for your filters, you can have some confidence in that what you've purchased is absolutely removing the contaminants. It would be wise first to identify if you have PFAS in your drinking water, right? So maybe get your water tested, especially if you are adjacent to any of those hot spots from the previous slide where PFAS was detected. That should give you a greater inclination for, yes, I do want my blood tested. Yes, I want my water tested. Yes, I want to invest in a water filter. I think that would be a good way to go. But even if you're like, I still want to do all of those things, do make sure that you use these types of tools to validate that before you spend that $100, that the brand is reliable. Now, you will have to kind of gauge, depending on the concentration of PFAS found in the water and the how much you use, your filter may be required to be replaced more frequently or less frequently. So then you're at that point of, how do I manage the filtration and ensure that my family stays safe more often than not?
Okay. Does that include, so the other day, this is interesting because the other couple of weeks ago, the Sierra Club, we went and toured the Lake County water treatment. Does the Lake County water treatment take care of all this?
Water pumping station. It was the water pumping station.
So the pumping station brings the water in, and then the drinking water plant does the chlorination, right? It removes the sediments, and then it moves it to the user. They are not currently required to test for PFAS, in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And so it's you, the consumer, that has to identify, like, all right, if I'm concerned about it, then I'm going to choose to use a filter. And I'm also going to choose to make sure that I know how much what's the concentration, or even if it's present.
Okay. Someone just mentioned that
I want to jump in here. We have a lady online who actually works at the water pumping station for Central Lake County. Want to make some comments here? I think you really should tell us what you're telling us in writing. Thank you.
Sure. So we have been testing for PFOA and PFOS since 2008 in the raw and the finished water for CLC Jawa. So We've had detection since then for PFOA and PFOS and the level is about, on average, it's anywhere from 2.2 to 2.7 parts per trillion. That number has not changed. So we've been testing every year. It hasn't gone up and it hasn't gone down. So PFOA and PFOS are no longer manufactured in the United States. And so it's not coming in from any kind of pollution or manufacturing. It's what has been basically in the lakes since these chemicals were manufactured in the 70s and the 80s. And they stopped manufacturing them in the early 2000s. And so we're not seeing it really, the half-life of these are so persistent. You don't really see it breaking down. So it's right now the federal EPA has the proposed levels. What they're proposing is 4 parts per trillion. And so we're under what they would propose as the regulations for PFOA and PFOS. And Illinois has, basically the Illinois EPA has said that they will, they're 99% sure that if the federal passes their regulations at 4, that Illinois EPA will follow and hold those regulations and stick with 4. And so federal EPA is actually behind. They were supposed to have regulations for us at the end of this year, and they are not going to at this point. So we're waiting to see where the regulations are going to fall. Right now we have filters that if we were to want them to actually remove the PFAS that we're seeing come through, we would have to replace the carbon about every 12 to 18 months in all of our filters. And so that's what we basically are looking at, is we would have to put in an additional granular active carbon filtration system to remove it before it goes out into the system. So, and then that's basically a decision that we would take to the board, which is all of the towns, because obviously there's an added cost to that type of a treatment process. And so we're really at this point, I think everybody's waiting in the drinking water industry to see where those regulations come through from the federal level.
And
Thank you
good
so
to
much
know.
for that. I don't think all of the water pumping are at the same caliber as that Lake Bluff station, the Central Lake County. Do you know?
So basically, Lake Michigan, anyone who's a Lake Michigan provider will have PFAS. So we all have to, so Chicago included, we all have it coming in from the lake. And, if you, even the membrane, there are some membrane plants, but if you want to remove it at a membrane plant, you have to go to what they call an ultra membrane filtration. And like Lake Forest has a membrane plant, but it's not an ultra membrane. So they are not able to remove it either. But we've been a little more proactive because we've been testing for it for years now. So we know what we're dealing with, and we've had this big history of it. When they did that study, when the IEPA did the study in 21, 22, they actually came to our facility, and at that point we hit non-detect on PFOA and PFOS. And so if you look at that snapshot, it says that we are blue because they didn't detect anything, because it was one sample. And that was all they took, and then they left. And and when they were testing the raw water systems, it was whatever wells were on at the time. And so that was a snapshot in time to do that study. So it might not accurately reflect what you're seeing. But PFOA and many of the PFAS are on what we call a UCMR, unregulated contaminant monitoring program. So all of the water systems right now are testing for 26 basically PFAS in the system. That's going to give you a much better idea of what we're really dealing with in Illinois when those results come out. And so the federal EPA is waiting for those as well to kind of see how we're going to fall in terms of the contamination in the systems.
Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Mila, you had one more question, I think, about sludge.
Yes. So is there any testing of sludge used in agriculture? And so what we've seen is that it totally depends on the treatment facility. There are some that have, like the speaker that just, finished, they're proactive. Once they learned about it, they started testing, as well as communicating with those using it and or stopping their programs for delivering sludge. You have those that are saying that they will begin testing. You have entities that test but haven't really publish those results. So we're finding that facilities are kind of all over the place, but in the event that it is included in their NIPIDs permit, which is the permit that is delivered to them by the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, if they have to test, they will begin doing it. But as she also just stated, there are added costs. And those are the conversations also that we're hearing is, what is this? What is it going to cost? Who's going to pay for it? And are there state funds to help facilities, make these decisions, upgrade, and or meet the requirements for their permits?
Thank you.
Okay.
Steve, are there any other questions?
That's all the questions.
Well, Mila, thank you so much. That was phenomenal. I wonder, I'm going to send out an email with the link for the this program. Are there any websites that you could send me that I can include with it that you've talked about tonight that you could just, I'll just include them with the email if there's anything you really want people to have.
I will outline all of the links that were included in the talk.
Just a couple people.
Okay.
They can always go to the tape, or it's not a tape, go to the link and collect them, but it'll be much easier if we just kind of shorten them up. But we're so delighted to have you. We're so honored, and we thank you very much. This concludes our November speaker series, and actually our speaker series for the year. We at Woods and Woodlands thank you all for coming and showing interest in this important problem. We at the Sunday speaker series are working to bring you more programs. We will be promoting those later through website and Facebook. For those of you, they'll be coming up for the new year. And so we thank you and hope to see you all again. We'll be looking for you. So thank you all. Good night.